going on, everyone? Bales, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going through another team reveal, but it's not AFL Fantasy this time. It'll be AFL SuperCoach. My predominant fantasy platform is AFL Fantasy, but I do play SuperCoach, so we're going to go through my team reveal, who I'm going to be picking in my side. This is before the practice games happen this weekend, so it could change well and truly after this, but this is before it happens. So we'll get into all the players, but before we do, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. It'd be very much appreciated. And also like the video if you're enjoying the content around here. All the support is always appreciated. Turn notifications on so you don't miss when I go live or uploading other content in the future. Also, go and follow AFL Fantasy Fanatics on Twitter. We do our live Twitter spaces every Sunday night at 4:30 p.m. Perth time and 7:30 for all the Eastern States. And then we also upload as a podcast, so go and check AFL Fantasy Fanatics wherever you podcast. Make sure you leave us a subscribe, follow, and review and rating. Me and Timmy very much appreciate all the support you guys have shown that so far. But without further ado, let's get into my AFL SuperCoach team reveal before the practice games. Alrighty guys, let's get into my AFL SuperCoach team reveal. So this is before the official practice games are getting underway. So this is who's currently in my defence. We'll go from obviously defence, midfield, ruck, and forward. Very much like the AFL Fantasy team reveal. So it'll be pretty much the exact same format. We'll go through each player, player by player, and I'll tell you why I've picked them in my side. So starting off in defence is obviously a bit cheaper in this format than what is in AFL Fantasy, but I'm going with Sam Doherty still as my D1. I know obviously your Sicilies and your Sinclairs obviously scored really well last year, but I just do like having Doherty there as D1 in all the formats because he's just a really, really high scorer. I know, obviously, as you can see there, Tom Stewart and James Sicily have got quite higher ownership compared to Doherty, but I'm pretty happy locking Doherty in there as D1. I would love to fit Dawson in there if I can find money, which could obviously happen once these practice games are done, but I'm actually going all the way down. Well, not all the way down, but just down a little bit, and I'm going Nick Dacos as my second defender. So he's obviously selected by a lot of people, 46%. I think he's just going to have a very good year for Collingwood, taking some kick-ins. The one flag for me before the practice games start, I just don't know. I'd like to see, well, obviously we're not going to get much until practice games, but in the season is the tags. That's the one probably flag for Dacos, but I think he'll get plenty of the ball back there, and I don't know how many tags will come his way. But that's just a flag there, but he's my D2 there at the moment. Moving down to D3. So this is where I've saved a bit of money. I know in AFL Fantasy, a lot of coaches have done this. We've saved a lot of cash, and I think SuperCoach is not in a bad position to save some cash. So I'm going all the way down to pick. Actually, this will just be a lot easier if I put his name in. Elliot Yeo. Elliot Yeo is going there as my third defender. He's been pretty faultless this preseason. He's pretty much done everything, and if he gets back to his best and plays all the games this year, he could push in SuperCoach to those top sort of 6 to 8 defenders, and considering that he's under 350k, I think it's a pretty good steal. So putting him there and locking him away as one of those defenders there at a pretty cheap price is pretty good. So then moving to the cheaper guys, we've got Ruben Ginbey is there. So West Coast Eagles rookie, looks like he's going to get games early. Missed the unofficial practice game because of a slight sort of toe issue, but I'm expecting him to play in the season proper, and hopefully in the practice game. That'd be nice to see. So moving into the next defender is another cheaper guy, and it is Charlie Constable. So he's looking like he's going to have a good role there at Gold Coast. Played very well in the unofficial practice game last week, a match simulation if you want to call it that. So he's looking good with Weller and Powell missing the first sort of month or so, or it's looking like they're going to. I think he's at his basement price, and he's probably going to score quite well. So locking him there, I think, is a good pick. And then I've got Campbell Chesser at the moment sitting on my field, because then on my bench, I've also got Darcy Wilmot and Lockie Cowan. So just depends if Chesser plays, I think he can score better than Wilmot and Cowan, but if he doesn't, then I've got a couple of goals on the bench. But I think having Chesser, regardless if he plays round 1 or not, I think putting him in there, he's going to play at some point. So I think having him, right, so I don't have to waste a trade bringing him in, I think that's not a bad call. But that's the defensive line there. Moving into the midfield, so this is where I've spent a few dollars compared to my AFL Fantasy, so I've actually spent up a bit more here. So I'm going the two big dogs, Rory Laird and Clayton Oliver. I've learned in the past, I think the last couple of years I haven't studied Clayton Oliver, and I think as a super coach, you should be starting Kane Oliver. Just the contested possessions he gets every game. He gets high disposals every game, and that's obviously gold for Supercoach as well. And he doesn't waste the ball either. He uses it, and he's very efficient. So I think having him there is a very good call. As my third midfield, I've gone Jack Steele. So there's a few guys around this price I do like, but Jack Steele had a bit of a down year last year, had obviously an injury-affected game as well against Geelong. So he's a bit cheaper than what he is generally been doing in the past. Just under 110 average, I think you can push it back up to 115 in Supercoach, and 22% of coaches have also selected him. So, yeah, actually, how many? And then Oliver's nearly half the competition. Led, not as much, but I think Led still was a good pick regardless. I've then got Josh Dunkley in my midfield. So I've done this in AFL Fantasies when I'm doing it in Supercoach because there are so many value forward options, and especially in Supercoach when you've got cheaper guys, which I'm sure we'll get into a couple of them as we pick the forwards. But I just think there's so many value options that having Dunkley in your midfield and then being able to put an extra value forward, I think is a good option. So that's why I do like it, and I can always flick Dunkley back into my forward line once I want to bring in another premium midfielder. Then we're saving a little bit of coin. So we're going Jacob Hopper. I think he's pretty like just pick. I think he's just a like value pick in Supercoach. Not so much in fantasy, but in Supercoach, 332k for a guy that you'd expect to go minimum 90. I think this is a good pick. So Dom Sheed's the other guy there that I'm picking there at the exact same price. Friend of the show for AFL Fantasy Fanatics. I love saying that just because he's an absolute legend. Putting him there as well. Cheap price, going to make some money and be a stepping stone to one of those pre-midfielders later on in the season. Then we've got our rookies. So we've got Will Ashcroft. I don't really need to say much more about this guy. 72% ownership as well. There's a reason for that. He's just an absolute gun, and putting him in there is a very good call. Will Phillips is next on the list. I think he had a obviously injury-plagued year and had glandular fever. Everything that could have gone wrong last year went wrong. So this year, third season in the system, I think he's in for a good year, and hopefully he can get some continuity and keep playing games. So at 158k, I think he's, again, you just pick him. So on the bench in the midfield, I have spent up for a few of these guys. So Cam McKenzie didn't play last week, so hopefully we can see some good things in the practice game this week. I'm assuming that he'll be back and available for selection. So paying up for him, I think you get a fair crack at Hawthorn. There's opportunity in the midfield there. So I do like him. I've then put Mateus Philippou on my bench in my midfield, and we'll get to why that is in the forwards, because there are plenty of forwards I want to select, but we'll get into that when we pick the forwards. But Philippou's there on my bench, and then rounding out my midfield, I've actually put Alex Cincotta. I'm assuming it's Cincotta there. Obviously, basement price. And obviously, I said Constable base price. He's nearly basement price. But Cincotta is basement price. So putting him there, again, I do like the flexibility. I guess if maybe a Cowan doesn't get named, put Cincotta in my midfield, in my defence, and then I can put another rookie in my midfield bench. But at the moment, that's what I've settled on, because I just think he played well in the match simulation last week. I think he'll could get an early debut. So putting him there for now. Obviously, rookies, it depends on if they're getting names. So that's who I've got there at the moment. In the rucks, at the moment, I've got, I think, Rowan Marshall. I think he's locked in for a lot of sides, 44% there. I just think he's just going to be the number one ruck for St Kilda this year, so I do like putting him in there. And I've also gone Darcy Cameron there, so I'm interested to see how this plays out in the practice game this week. Will he get the lion's share of the work? Will Mason Cox be 50-50? That's what scares me, being 50-50. It is fraught a little bit with danger picking someone like that that's going to have not a great role. So I could pay up for a Tim English, or even get a Brody Grundy, who's a little bit cheaper as well. There's a few guys in that R2 spot that I may want to pick up, but at the moment I've got Darcy Cameron sitting there. And then on my bench, Lachlan McAndrew played really well last week, but I'm going to be putting Asava Radigalia there. I think he's going to get games early. Looks like he's got that defensive role there. So I just think having that security there on the bench, I think will be good. Unless, for example, a guy scored really, really well, my vice captain in round 1, and I need a loophole, then I'd be happy to maybe get a ruckman that's not playing. But at the moment, I've got Radigalia there just because I think that he's going to play. Moving on to the forwards. So at the moment, I'm paying up for a few of these guys. So Stephen Coniglio is the first one there. From what Adam Kingsley said, is that he's going to be getting pretty much a midfield dominant role, or majority midfield role, I think that if he does that, he'll score really well. Obviously had a good year last year, and I think he'll be able to back it up this year. And even the first 10 games last year, he was playing in the forward line. So he's got a little bit of value built into him already. So I think he can go maybe at 105 plus to be a good pick. So that means underpriced and good value. I've then also gone for Tim Taranto. Poor year last year, 91. I know he sometimes doesn't use the ball necessarily well and all the time, but he does get a lot of contested possessions. I think he'll have a good year and bounce back, and I think he can go back over 100 again. So that's why I'm going him there. And then actually what I should have done is Connor Rosie. So what I'll do, I love putting players in terms of order, in terms of price. So Rosie will go first, Taranto will go second. So Rosie will be going in there. Again, had a great year last year, especially after when he went to the midfield. Might have been around 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there when he went in there. And especially the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks when we went off. So I know in Supercoach, he's a lot more of a higher scorer compared to AFL Fantasy because he does use the ball, so he's a lot more efficient with the ball. Obviously, hits the scoreboard. So, yeah, Connor Rosie, I think, pretty much picks himself. So, again, you can see the ownership here, 42% and 52% for Rosie and Taranto. So, a lot of coaches are doing the same thing, getting on. Another guy that I really like, being quite cheap and is a very good Supercoach scorer, is Ben Cunnington. I still don't understand how he's under 10% ownership. So, 419k for a guy that is built on contested possessions and tackling and using the ball. And he does use the ball well as well. So that's the 3 things you want from a Supercoach player. He's a forward and he's under 420k. So again, I think he's a player that picks himself. I'm still very surprised he's only selected by 9%. But for me, just put him in there and you're done. Then I've gone Toby McLean. So underpriced, obviously very cheap at 178k there. I think he's going to get opportunity at the Dogs. I think Dunkley leaving, he'll get more of that midfield time. Maybe he might not get a huge, amazing bump. We saw he scored pretty well in that elimination final in his only game last year. So, Tony McLean, I think, is a very good pick there as well. And then we've also got the Cheezel, Harry Sheezel, in there. So, he's actually, again, more expensive. So, I've got to swap that around. Apologies for that. So, Sheezel is a more expensive guy, but he looked fantastic last week in the practice game against Richmond. So I think that he's going to play round 1, and I think he'll be a very valuable rookie there. Might have a bit of a variety of roles. He did play down back, obviously went back a little bit in the practice game last week. He's mostly even played forward that's pushing up the ground. He has some midfield minutes also, and he played on a wing. So he was thrown around a little bit. He may have that happen this year, so his scoring could vary a little bit, but I think he's just a good rookie to have and looks a great talent. So having him there is another good pick. And then to round out the forwards, so going to be going Jai Menzie here. Looked good, kicked 3 goals last week in their practice game, and I would imagine that he'll get a bit of a fair chance this year for the Bombers and played many games, so I've got him there. Might not be a huge scorer, but I think that he, as I said, will get games. He'll score enough. He'll make a little bit of cash, so I do like him. And then rounding out the forwards, Fergus Green, I think he's just going to get a lot of opportunity for the Hawks this year. He's going to be one of their guys that they put in. And yeah, that's pretty much how it rounds out. Obviously, as I said before, the rookies, it'll just depend on who gets named round 1. But I think a lot of these guys will get named. In terms of looking at the actual squad here, maybe the one thing I don't like too much is the defence is a little bit weak. So I wouldn't be opposed to maybe going a Jack Steele down to, say, for example, if James Warple plays well in the preseason, maybe he becomes an option. Maybe a Tanner Brun from Geelong. One of those guys there, I could go him down there, and then I could also then use that money on top of, say, a Cow and put Chester on the bench and get a better defender. That's something that I'm considering. The other thing as well, obviously, Darcy Cameron, do I go up to English? Do I go down to Asav Radigalia and then put Lachlan McAndrew on my bench and go really cheap in my rucks? That's something else I've played with. I don't normally like doing that in either format, either it be Supercoach, Dream Team, or AFL Fantasy. I don't like getting a cheap rut like that, but that is just an option there because he's so cheap here. So that's how the team's looking. And Laird captain, Clayton Oliver vice captain. I think that's pretty straightforward for what I'll be doing. So that's the Supercoach team there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what you think of the team and if I should make any changes, because I'm a AFL Fantasy coach. That's my game I predominantly play, but I do play Supercoach as well. So for those people out there that play Supercoach more, let me know your thoughts on the team. And if you play Fantasy, let me know your thoughts on the team anyway. Let me know your thoughts, if it should make any changes, any questions you guys have about maybe combos that you guys want, let me know and I'll answer them as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're on our road to 1,000 subscribers. We've gained a fair few this preseason, so I really appreciate everyone's support on the channel. It's always appreciated. Like the video if you're enjoying the content around here. And also go and follow AFL Fantasy Fanatics on Twitter. We do the Twitter space every Sunday night, 4:30 p.m. Perth time, and then 7:30 p.m. For all the Eastern states. And then we upload it as a podcast. So go check that out at AFL Fantasy Fanatics, wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you leave us a follow, subscribe, whatever button's there, and a review and rating, because that's always very much appreciated as well. Me and Tim appreciate all the support on there as well. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm out. Cheers.